Hey everybody, Smart Silver Stacker here. Today is Wednesday, April 27th, 2022, and we are seeing a significant escalation in the economic warfare between the West and Russia, with the recent announcement by Russia that they will be cutting off natural gas supplies to two NATO countries, Bulgaria and Poland. And this is as a result of the failure of Poland and Bulgaria to make payments for natural gas in rubles, as Russia demanded at the beginning of April. And at the same time, we've gotten this report from Bloomberg today about how 4 European gas buyers have already made ruble payments to Russia. And this article doesn't mention who these specific buyers are who have been paying in rubles, although we'll get into that in just a moment because I don't think it's going to take too much digging to figure that out. But notably, the article does mention that 10 European countries have already opened accounts at Gazprombank that are needed to meet Russia's payment demands. So 4 payers have already paid rubles, but 10 are getting ready to. So what we are witnessing is the capitulation by EU member states to Russia's demands to pay in rubles. And I believe that moving forward, we are going to see more and more buyers actually paying in rubles. And of course, this is going to lend support to the ruble as a currency moving forward because these payers are going to have to go out onto the open market and buy rubles, and that demand will add some support to the value of the ruble. Now, to figure out who the 4 entities are that have already made payments, we can take a look at this headline here. Uniper is a German utility company, and here's a headline: Uniper hopes to resolve ruble issue with Gazprom. And we can see in this article here that Uniper CFO Tina Tumela has stated that our view is that a payment is still permissible and the payment may involve euros converted to rubles. So likely German utilities are going ahead and making payments in rubles. And this is no surprise, as Germany is one of the nations that is most dependent on Russian gas imports. And here's another headline: Austria has agreed to pay for Russian gas in rubles after the cut to Bulgaria and Poland. So we're seeing that when push comes to shove, these EU member states are not providing a unified front as some of the more hawkish members were hoping. But Austria is not a member of NATO. So I'm sure they're looking at this situation and they're thinking like, we don't really have a dog in this fight. We just want to get our energy. So they're going to go ahead and pay in rubles. They're going to do what they need to do to get their gas. And then as far as the other nations, one of them is likely Hungary. This is an article from about 3 weeks ago on April 6th, where Hungary's authoritarian leader, that's Viktor Orban, he's pictured there shaking hands with Putin. That's back in 2019. He has broken with the EU, saying that he'll pay for Russian gas in rubles. And I mean, he pretty much immediately capitulated. It didn't really take much time at all. And then similarly, here's an article from back on April 3rd, where we saw the Slovakian economy minister say that the country could not be cut off from Russian gas and that if it had to pay in rubles, it would. And Slovakia relies on Russia for 85% of its gas supplies. So no surprise that they would go ahead and capitulate to these payment demands, because when you rely on a country for 85% of your gas imports, it would be disastrous to have that gas cut off. You'd see energy prices spike up. It would probably trigger some kind of a massive recession. And with something like natural gas, it's difficult to find alternate supplies because, they're getting all of this Russian gas via pipelines, which is a very efficient way to distribute it. But, if we want to send American gas, for example, over to some of these European countries to help them reduce their dependence on Russia, you got to put the gas on ships and send it over, and it's a whole process, so it's not nearly as efficient as the pipeline. So, there's no easy replacement. So it's no surprise that some of these countries that are more dependent on Russian gas are capitulating. And what we're seeing here is that Russia, they hold real stuff, and these EU countries, what they have is fiat currency. And so the Russians, as the holders of real stuff, the holders of commodities, they've got the strong hand. They're going to be able to dictate the terms of these energy payments. I think it's very important to note that the short-term implications of this are important, and that's kind of what all these articles are focusing on. Basically just that countries that toe the line will get their gas, they'll pay in rubles, and then countries that don't, that demand to make the payments in euros or dollars, they're simply not going to get their gas. That is an important short-term development here, but in the long run, The more important thing, which none of these articles from mainstream media sources really are mentioning, is the de-dollarization effect of these energy payments being settled in a currency other than dollars. If you've seen some of my other videos on de-dollarization, you'll know what I'm talking about. But basically, the petrodollar system, the fact that the dollar for the past 50 years or so has been the de facto currency for settling international energy payments, it's very important. It's a bedrock of the dollar status as the world reserve currency, and it is a huge factor that lends support to the dollar. I think this is kind of like the camel's nose getting into the tent. Once these payments begin to get settled in a currency other than the dollar, they're going to get settled in national currencies, in rubles, maybe in gold, who knows? That's sort of the talk we've heard out of Russia. But the fact that they're no longer being settled in dollars, even if this conflict gets resolved, regardless of how this conflict gets resolved, I think it's very unlikely that these payments are going to go back to being settled in dollars. That is a very dangerous precedent for the dollar, because the more and more we see other currencies being used to settle these international energy payments, that is less and less demand for the dollar. And every time a payment switches over to another currency, it's like a death by 1,000 cuts for the dollar. Individually, these moves against the dollar won't take it down, but collectively, what we are seeing is a shift away from the dollar being a world reserve currency, from being a tool for international payment settlement. And ultimately, that is going to threaten the underpinnings of the existing world financial order in which the dollar is the dominant currency. We're going to see a transition to a more multipolar global financial system. And that's exactly what I talk about in those other videos. So if you haven't seen those, go check those out. But it is important to note, this is a very dangerous situation for the dollar moving forward. The fact that some of these EU nations, who are definitely US allies, but we're seeing that when push comes to shove, they're not willing to sacrifice their own national interest and their own economies simply to prop up the dollar and to maintain the current financial order. They might come out and complain about Russia. The EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, she's saying that this Russian move is blackmail, and the fact that they're cutting off gas payments is blackmail. Despite the fact, of course, that the West, the EU and the US have unleashed this massive economic warfare campaign against Russia with the largest package of sanctions in modern history, and seizing all of their foreign assets. Forget all that. This is blackmail, what Russia is doing. I think that Russia has probably been waiting a long time to make this move. They've been planning for de-dollarization, along with China, by the way. It's not Russia alone. It's China and possibly other BRICS nations, also nations like Iran. They've all been waiting for their chance to strike against the dollar, because they understand that the US dollar status as the world reserve currency is really the underpinnings of the American empire and the unipolar world order that we've seen following the Cold War. And they have just been waiting for their chance to strike it down. And this shift to international energy payments being settled in rubles, it's a significant blow against the dollar. And again, the mainstream media is not really mentioning that. They're not really covering it. But I think that that is the biggest takeaway from all of these developments. And we are seeing, like I mentioned, that people who hold real stuff, who hold commodities, they've got the strong hand over folks who are holding paper. And I think that, we as stackers can all take a lesson away from that. That's why I am saving some of my wealth in physical, tangible commodities, monetary metals like gold and silver. Time will prove that holders of physical commodities like gold and silver are going to be the strong hands compared to those holding paper fiat currencies. So let me know what you think. Is this a significant blow against the petrodollar system, against the dollar status as a world reserve currency? Or is this just a flash in the pan? Is this all going to change and reverse once we see this conflict get resolved? I'd like to know what you have to say, so let me know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video and you'd like to see more videos about commodities, the dollar, gold, silver, oil, energy, check out the videos that are popping up on your screen right now, and I will catch you next time. Thank you all very much for watching. Smart Silver Stacker, out.